When you stand on a mountain, the view is unlike anything seen on flat land. The air feels lighter, the sight broader, and the distractions of the ground seem smaller from above. Spiritually, this is exactly what the message of the Messiah calls us to. Leaving behind the lowlands where fear, guilt, and endless cycles of human struggle dominate, and instead climbing to a higher ground, where vision is clear and life takes on a new shape. The journey of faith is never a simple invitation to stay where you are. The call of the Messiah is always upward, always into transformation. If you remain where you started, clinging to the old terrain, you miss the whole point of being called. Imagine the Israelites freed from Egypt, but refusing to leave the shadow of Pharaoh's armies. Freedom would be nothing more than a word. So it is with us. Salvation is not simply being rescued, it is being lifted, carried, and reformed. But here is the challenge. Higher ground is not reached without effort. Mountains require climbing. The slopes are steep, and the higher you go, the thinner the air becomes. The spiritual life reflects this truth. The habits that once chained us will attempt to pull us back down. Doubts whisper, voices around us question why we strive, and the weight of yesterday tries to tie us to the valley. Yet the Messiah did not come to keep us bound to familiar earth. He came to place our feet on solid rock, above the storms that shake the plain. Think of Peter on the water. As long as his eyes stayed fixed on the one who walked before him, he did the impossible. The moment his focus dropped, the waves reclaimed him. This is the battle of climbing higher, where you fix your vision determines your altitude. A bird does not fly by staring at the ground, but by lifting its eyes to the horizon. Faith demands the same. When we rise, everything beneath looks different. Problems that seemed overwhelming from the valley shrink in size when seen from the hilltop. What once felt like the end of your strength is revealed as a temporary obstacle. Even time itself feels different at higher ground. Down below, days may feel heavy, but up above you sense eternity pressing close. The temporary loses its grip, and the eternal comes alive. Still, the path upward is not merely for ourselves. Mountains are not climbed to sit alone at the peak. They are climbed so that light can be seen by others still in the shadow. In Scripture, whenever God revealed His greatest truths, He often did so on a mountain. Moses received the law at Sinai. Elijah heard the whisper of God on Horeb. Yeshua himself was transfigured before his disciples on a high place. Higher ground is where revelation is found, not just for us, but to be carried down to those still in the valley. The Messiah calls each of us not only to personal transformation, but to be bearers of that transformation to a weary world. To ascend is to leave behind self-centered vision. It is no longer only about what comforts us, but about what blesses others. The climb strips us of what cannot survive at higher altitudes: selfishness, bitterness, grudges, pride. Carry those things uphill, and you will suffocate. Release them, and you will breathe more freely. There is another truth in this calling: the summit itself is not here. Every peak you reach will show another higher one in the distance. Faith is never finished this side of eternity. Paul wrote that he pressed on, forgetting what lay behind, always stretching forward. The climb was not over until he reached the true summit: eternal life with the Messiah. That means today's height is tomorrow's valley. What feels like progress now is only the beginning of another step. This may sound discouraging to some, but it is actually the joy of the walk. For as long as there is more of God to discover, there is purpose to every step we take. And here lies the beauty: the higher we rise, the closer heaven feels, even while our feet still touch the ground. The Messiah himself bridged heaven and earth, inviting us to live in that union. He did not simply descend so we could remain as we were. He descended so he could lift us with him. The resurrection was not only his victory. It was a promise that his followers would share in the same power. Raised above sin, death, and despair. So ask yourself, where have you settled? Have you remained in the familiar valleys of routine, where faith is safe but shallow? Or have you heard the voice calling you higher? It may come as a stirring in prayer, a restlessness in your soul, or even through trials that push you beyond your comfort. Do not mistake the challenge as punishment. It may be the very call to ascend. Climbing requires leaving things behind. Fear cannot make the journey, neither can resentment. Even some relationships or pursuits may not be able to go with you. The higher you rise, the more focused you must become. Just as a climber packs lightly, so must a follower of Messiah travel with open hands, willing to let go of anything that drags the soul downward. But here is the encouragement: you do not climb alone. The same one who calls you higher also gives the strength to rise. His Spirit is like the breath of the mountain itself, filling your lungs when you feel faint. When you stumble, His hand is there. When the path seems invisible, His word is the lamp at your feet. The climb is impossible in your own strength, but with Him, it becomes the journey you were created for. The higher ground is not reserved for a chosen few. It is the destiny of all who hear the call and respond. Whether your life feels stuck in shadows, or you already walk at a decent height, there is always more. The mountain of God is limitless, and when you reach each new height, you will discover not only more of Him, but more of who you were meant to be. So rise. Take the step upward today. Do not wait for the perfect moment or clearer conditions. The mountain does not shrink with delay, the valley only deepens. Begin now, and each step will be met with grace. Before long, you will find yourself looking back at the ground you left, amazed at how far you have come, and looking ahead at a horizon brighter than you ever imagined. For the Messiah has not simply called you to survive. He has called you to ascend, to live higher, breathe deeper, and shine brighter, until the day you stand on the summit of eternity with Him. When a river flows from the heights of a mountain, it moves with purity and strength. At its source, the water is fresh, untainted, and filled with life. But the farther it travels into the valley, the more it gathers dust, debris, and the marks of the world around it. This is a picture of what happens when we live far from the higher ground of God's presence. The longer we remain in the low places, the easier it is for our souls to collect burdens that weigh us down. But if we return to the source, upward, where the streams begin, we find renewal, clarity, and the strength to keep going. The calling of the Messiah is not only about rescue, it is about being restored to the place we were meant to be. Humanity was not created for valleys of despair. In the beginning, Adam and Eve walked with God in a garden that touched heaven and earth together. That was higher ground. Sin pulled us downward, and ever since, the voice of God has been echoing through the ages. Come back up. The invitation of Messiah is a return to that place of communion, where life is not defined by fear or failure, but by the nearness of His presence. But there is a tension here. Climbing higher does not mean escaping the world. Mountains are not built so that we hide from life's responsibilities. The Messiah Himself often withdrew to high places to pray, but then He descended again, bringing healing to the broken and hope to the weary. The higher ground is not about abandoning life, it is about gaining the perspective to live life rightly. Without that ascent, we lose sight of why we are here. With it, even the smallest act takes on eternal significance. Think of Abraham. When God first called him, He told him to go to a land I will show you. He did not hand Abraham a map. Instead, Abraham had to walk by faith, step by step, it always looking upward for direction. That is the essence of the higher journey. It demands trust. You may not see the full peak, but you climb because you know the one who called you is faithful. Each step tests your faith, but each step also strengthens it. Now consider how climbing reshapes us. On the mountain, the air is thinner. Breathing takes effort. The body adjusts by developing new strength. Spiritually, this is what happens when we rise above comfort zones. Prayers become deeper, trust grows stronger, and the soul learns to endure what once seemed impossible. Hardships that once crushed you are now met with quiet strength. Why? Because you have learned to breathe the higher air of God's Spirit. But here lies a paradox: the higher you go, the more humble you become. In the valley, people often boast of their achievements. On the mountain, surrounded by vastness, you realize how small you are compared to the one who made it all. This humility is not weakness. It is the secret to power. For the lower we bow before Him, the higher He lifts us. The Messiah Himself, though He was the Son of God, humbled Himself to serve, to wash feet, and to bear the cross. In doing so, He ascended to the highest place of all. If we desire to follow Him upward, we too must learn the humility of service. And here is the beautiful truth: every act of obedience, no matter how small, is a step upward. Every time you choose forgiveness instead of bitterness, you rise. Every time you choose generosity over greed, you rise. Every time you choose truth over compromise, you rise. The climb is not measured by giant leaps, but by steady, faithful steps. Even if no one else notices, heaven sees, and each step brings you closer to the summit. But we must also be prepared. As you ascend, the path narrows. Choices that were once acceptable at lower levels may no longer fit at higher ones. Just as a climber sheds unnecessary weight, the soul must release what cannot survive at greater heights. This may mean letting go of certain distractions, unhealthy attachments, or even habits that once seemed harmless. The closer you draw to God, the more He refines you. The fire of His presence burns away what does not belong, not to harm you, but to set you free. Let us remember Elijah on Mount Carmel. Surrounded by false prophets, he stood firm, calling on the living God. The fire from heaven descended, proving the reality of God's power. That victory happened on a mountain, not in the valley. Why? Because the higher place is where clarity comes. On lower ground, the noise of competing voices confuses. On higher ground, the voice of God silences all others. If you feel lost, climb upward. If the noise of life drowns out your peace, seek the stillness of His heights. There you will hear the whisper that changes everything. Yet the climb also prepares us for storms. On a mountain, winds are stronger, and storms strike harder. But a mountain also teaches resilience. When the storm passes, the mountain still stands, and so does the one whose foundation is built on the rock. Messiah never promised that higher ground would be free of storms. He promised that with Him, you would stand through them. In fact, it is often on the mountain, in the midst of storms, that you experience the greatest revelations of His strength. And so we must ask, are we content in the valley? Many are. The valley is safe, predictable, familiar. But the valley was never meant to be your final home. There is more. There is always more. The Messiah does not call you simply to exist. He calls you to rise, to see from His perspective, to breathe His Spirit, to walk in His light. Imagine reaching a height where the air is clear, where worries that weighed you down seem distant, and where the light of eternity shines brighter than the shadows of the present. That is what awaits those who climb. It is not an easy road, but it is the only one that leads to true life. So take courage. Begin the ascent today. Do not measure your progress against others. Each soul has its own path, its own pace. What matters is that you keep moving upward. When you stumble, rise again. When you grow weary, lean on the one who climbed before you and conquered death itself. He knows the path, for He carved it with His own steps. One day, the climb will be complete. The final summit will rise before you, not of this earth, but of eternity. And on that day, every step, every sacrifice, every moment of faith will be revealed as worth it. You will stand on the mountain of God, not as a weary traveler, but as a child welcomed home. Until then, rise higher, always higher. For the one who calls you is waiting at the summit, and his arms are strong enough to carry you when your strength fades. A mountain peak is not simply a place of arrival, it is a place of vision. From there, you see not only where you have been, but where you are going. The valleys, rivers, forests, and paths below come together into a pattern that cannot be understood from the ground. This is what it means to live on higher ground with the Messiah. It is not only about escaping what holds us down, but about seeing life from his perspective, where every struggle, victory, and season begins to make sense in the greater story God is writing. Life in the valley often blinds us. When troubles surround us, our vision narrows. We see only the immediate challenge, the present pain, or the unfinished task. But when the soul climbs higher, perspective changes. What once looked like a dead end is revealed as a bend in the path. What once felt like loss is seen as preparation. From above, you realize that the road you feared was wasted was in fact leading you toward a destiny you could not yet see. The Messiah always called his followers to lift their eyes. Look at the fields, he said, they are ready for harvest. Lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. This lifting of vision is part of the upward call. It is a reminder that we are not bound to see as the world sees. We are invited to look through the eyes of heaven, and when you see through heaven's eyes, everything changes. Consider the life of Joseph. From the valley, his story looked like betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment. Yet from higher ground, it was revealed as a path of preparation, leading him to a place where he could save not only Egypt, but his own family. Had Joseph remained in the valley of bitterness, he would never have risen to fulfill his purpose. But because he trusted God through each step, the low places became the very foundation of his ascent. This is why faith is not just belief. It is vision. Faith sees what is not yet visible because it looks from a higher place. When others see impossibility, faith sees promise. When others see finality, faith sees resurrection. When others see weakness, faith sees the strength of God made perfect. To live by faith is to live on higher ground, where your eyes are not chained by the immediate, but open to the eternal. Yet the climb also demands endurance. The higher you go, the harder the winds blow. The path becomes steeper, and the temptation to turn back grows stronger. Even the greatest men and women of faith faced moments of weakness. Elijah, after calling down fire on Mount Carmel, collapsed in fear and despair. Moses, after leading Israel through the wilderness, grew weary of their complaints. Even the disciples, after seeing miracles, doubted on stormy seas. But in each case, God reminded them, keep moving, keep trusting, keep climbing. You may find yourself in such a place, caught between progress and exhaustion, tempted to settle for the plateau rather than pressing onward. But remember this, the greatest views are not seen halfway up the mountain. They are reserved for those who endure to the summit. Every step of perseverance carries you closer to a breakthrough. Every prayer, though it feels unnoticed, echoes in eternity. Every act of obedience, though it feels small, is a step upward. There is also joy in the climb itself. It is not only about reaching the summit, but about walking with the one who climbs beside you. The Messiah is not waiting at the top, distant and silent. He is with you on the trail. He speaks in the silence of prayer, strengthens you in your weakness, and carries you when your steps falter. The climb is not just a journey with God, it is a journey with God. Think of the disciples who walked with Yeshua on the road. They were ordinary men, yet uncertain of their future, but in his presence their ordinary steps became extraordinary. The same is true for us. What may feel like small, daily acts, praying, forgiving, serving, giving, becomes holy when done with him. The mountain is not climbed in leaps but in steps, and each step with him is sacred. But what happens when you fall? Every climber stumbles. Every believer slips. The enemy whispers that one fall ends the journey. that failure disqualifies you. But the truth is far greater. The mountain is climbed by grace, not perfection. The Messiah does not condemn the fallen climber. He lifts them up, sets their feet back on the path, and strengthens them to rise again. A stumble does not end your ascent. It may even deepen your humility and draw you closer to the one who carries you. As you ascend, you will also notice this: the higher you climb, the clearer the light becomes. Valleys are often shadowed, with limited visibility. But on the heights, the sun shines unhindered. Spiritually, this is the light of God's truth. On lower ground, confusion reigns and compromise feels tempting. On higher ground, His word shines like the morning sun, revealing the way forward. The more you rise, the less you depend on your own understanding, and the more you walk in His clarity. And what of the summit? Though no earthly mountain can compare to the final height God has prepared, there are moments in this life when He gives us glimpses. Times of worship where His presence feels overwhelming. Moments of prayer where peace floods the soul. Seasons of breakthrough where His hand is unmistakable. These are foretastes of the eternal summit. They remind us that the climb is worth it, that the peak is real, and that the one who promised will fulfill. Until that day, our calling is to live as those who have seen the mountain. Even while walking among the valleys of this world, we carry the perspective of higher ground. That means bringing hope into despair, light into darkness, peace into conflict, and truth into confusion. To live on higher ground is not to escape the world, but to transform it by carrying the vision of the summit into the valley. So where are you today? Perhaps you are at the base, unsure where to begin. Take the first step. Perhaps you are midway, weary and tempted to give up. Fix your eyes again on the peak and press on. Perhaps you have stumbled and feel unworthy to continue. Rise, for the one who calls you has not abandoned you. Wherever you are, the call remains the same: higher, always higher. For the Messiah did not call you to live bound to the shadows. He called you to rise above them, to breathe the pure air of His Spirit, and to see with the vision of eternity. And one day, when the final climb is done, you will stand on the mountain of God, where every tear is wiped away, every struggle is past, and every promise is fulfilled. Until then, climb with faith, climb with endurance, climb with joy, and know that with every step, you are ascending to higher ground with Him who has already conquered the mountain of death and now waits to welcome you at the summit of eternity.